Hi, are you there? You okay? I'm okay. You okay? If you're not okay, you're not alone. If you are, I'm happy to hear it. Either way, let's do the show. We're here for you. Stand up. Yeah, welcome, man. We are off, and I hope that you're doing okay, hanging in there, finding some joy, finding some peace, and I appreciate all of your feedback on the new format of the show. I am really finding my way in this new world that we're in. Joining me today, Professor Jeff Jarvis and Professor and Doctor of Bioethics Arthur Caplan, both on the show. The interviews start at 30 minutes and then 1 hour. But first, as I have every day this week and last week, I've got your good stuff, which is something you can look forward to each day here on Stand Up. These important thoughts, sayings, practices, poems, prayers, songs, whatever you want, whatever makes you feel good, it is here, hopefully, and that's what I'm trying to harness every day in this first segment. Then we get serious. I've got your news and clips coming up as well. 3 segments on the show, the good stuff, the news, and the interviews you can look forward to each and every day. And this Friday, I'll be going live, taking your calls like the old days. Going to try to figure that out, but subscribe to youtube.com/standupwithpete right now. And I will be hosting another hangout on Thursday night. That's tomorrow night. And if you missed Monday's hangout, you can go relive it. I'll share the link in the subscriber email, which you should be getting each and every day if you're a paid subscriber. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Welcome to all new subscribers, including Penny, Kurt, and after my conversation with Jeff Jarvis, he resubscribed or subscribed for the first time. I'm not sure, but I'm very excited to have all of you subscribing, and you get access to the Discord platform as well, which is a chat platform. If you don't know how to get into it, let me know. I will help you, but that's there 24/7 for anybody who is a stand-up subscriber. Go check out the Discord platform. You're never alone if you're a subscriber to Stand Up. There's all kinds of amazing, wonderful, diverse group of people that support this show and are part of this community. Can't do it without you. So please take advantage of the benefits of the community. I'm doing all I can to invest, curate, and grow it for all of us. So I'm very, very happy to have you. Well, as always, I want to hear from you. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Ideas, compliments, criticisms, anything you want. Todd in Tampa yesterday sent me a very nice email. Said, hey, Pete, subscriber, longtime listener from the early AM hours, serious, back when you were on, I think, the POTUS channel. And on most days, I'm a bumblebee, which means he listens all the way to the end of the show. Just checking in to let you know I appreciate the 3-segment format you're now working with. I enjoy starting my morning with a positive messaging before hearing the news. Delivered by my favorite podcast host, of course. It's a great mental warm-up for the day. Thank you for continuing to share inspiration from members of the stand-up community, nuggets from your own well-being practices, especially by featuring Dr. Deborah Adamy last Friday. What a timely interview from such a positive presence personified. I'm typically coming from home from a yin yoga class during the time of the Thursday night hangout, but join from time to time. Thanks for adding the second night as well as sharing the link to the recordings. You've really got a positive and meaningful thing going, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Todd, that is exactly what I want to hear. I am so glad that you appreciate it. I will be thinking of you the rest of today's show as I put it together. Very, very grateful for that email. All right, let's get started right now with the good stuff. I want to begin by reading the cheesiest poem ever. That's right. I'm not even being sarcastic. This poem is cheesy. I don't even know who wrote it, but when I was in about 7th grade, I had the most unoriginal dream of any young boy, which was to be a star athlete. And I pretty much knew at that point I wasn't going to be, because I was still the smallest kid and I wasn't the best player. But lacrosse was my game. My dad introduced me to it a few years earlier in Syracuse, where I grew up. It was probably the most popular sport, and Syracuse University was the #1 team in the nation for years. Of course, Jim Brown played lacrosse there. Anyway, I was at lacrosse camp. I went to lacrosse camp, and the coach of Syracuse University, they kind of used it as a recruiting tool, but not for kids necessarily like me. But the coach was this very spiritual, positive guy named Roy Simmons Jr., and one day during camp, he had us all sitting down in front of him, and he read this poem, and I love it. and I still have a copy of it that he gave out on my fridge today. It's all worn down, but it's over 30 years old. I'm going to read it right now, and then I'm going to share a picture of this well-worn piece of paper with you because I've hung it up everywhere I've gone. I think I put it away for a while because I got all these deeper writings, sayings, and poems and thought it was cheesy. But you know what? It still works for me. Here it is. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a person turns about when they might have won had they stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the struggler is given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late. Then the night came down, how close he was to the golden crown. You see, success can be failure turned inside out. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worst that you mustn't quit. How about that? Yeah, it worked for me. It worked for me as a little boy. It works for me today when I want to give up, when I want to quit. And I read that poem, and for some reason it clicks. I never did make the team at Syracuse University or even allowed to be on campus, but that's a whole different story. And by the way, if you have a poem, a saying, anything like that you live by or that you have like I do on my fridge or your wall or whatever as a reminder, please send it my way. I'll give you credit for it and share it with everybody. It'll make a big impact and a difference. I know it. standupwithpete@gmail.com. And here's another one I printed out years ago and like to keep around. 12 things to always remember. The past cannot be changed. Opinions don't define your reality. Everyone's journey is different. Things always get better with time. Judgments are a confession of character. Overthinking will lead to sadness. That's right. Happiness is found within. Positive thoughts create positive things. Often, I try. Smiles are contagious. I agree with that, especially with strangers. Kindness is free. You only fail if you quit. Hey, I just read a poem this day. What goes around comes around. Yeah, karma. Fuck around and find out. There you go. A few more good sayings. And now a quote from one of the greatest of all time, the Buddhist monk, peace activist, prolific author, poet, and teacher, Deborah Adamy mentioned him last week. He founded the Plum Village tradition, which is recognized as the main inspiration for what's called engaged Buddhism, known as the father of mindfulness. You're going to hear me referencing him a lot. Thich Nhat Hanh said, when another person makes you suffer, it's because he suffers deeply within himself, and his suffering is just spilling over. He does not need punishment. He needs help. That's the message he is sending. Sorry about the gender he. Apply it to anybody you want, but so true. And one more. Sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. Hey, thanks, Thich Nhat Hanh. Love all of your work and read it all the time. Sharing it makes me feel real good. Just a couple things I want to play for you in today's good stuff. Let's get to a guy who's made a huge impact on my life. You might have heard him back on the old show and on this show. He is film director, writer, author, super inspiring mentor, and kind of a guru now. It's Tom Shadyac. And I'm going to definitely reach out and get Tom back on the show. But here he is talking to the very popular podcast host, Rich Roll, talking about selfishness and how it will destroy us all. Take it away, Tom.
There is this individual, and we want that individual to express himself, herself, themselves. We want that expression. It's beautiful. We want competition. I want to know how good Ant Edwards is now in the playoffs. He's incredible, but to what end? To the winner belongs the spoils was never a part of competition. Competition was from the word competare, which means to strive with. But it is only a toxic story that says, no, it's all about you and you alone. You are separate. Pull yourself out of nature, conquer the earth, tell things where to grow, tell things what to do. Don't live in concert with it. It's about you. And well, how's it working out for us? We've only been around a couple million years. Life has been around a lot longer than that. It's doing its thing. Will we stick around? I'm very optimistic we will, but this idea has got to continue to rise up. You've been doing it for years on your podcast. It is not just about the individual. It is about both.
Yeah, I have been doing it for years on my podcast. Wait, he was talking to Rich Roll. Screw that. No, that would be antithetical to what he just said, I think. All right. I love Tom Shadyac. I highly encourage that you get his book called Life's Operating Manual. He published back in 2013. That sits on the nightstand above my bed. That's how sacred it is to me. And of course, watch his films, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Nutty Professor, Liar Liar, Patch Adams, Bruce Almighty, and more. Also did a great documentary called I Am years back that I highly recommend as well. All right. I like this. I saw this on Instagram from the actor Rainn Wilson, who, of course, you know from The Office, talking about the meaning of life and how it, for him and for me, too, service to others. I like this a lot.
Meaning of life is service to others. That's it. He said, when you are a service to others, that will vanquish your own inadequacies, your anxieties, your depression. It brings you into the moment. And not only that, it makes the world a better place. And there's a lot of people that need a lot of service right now. So shifting humanity's entire focus from self-interest to other interest, instead of selfishness, other-ishness was his entire thesis of the meaning of life. And I thought that was, it's so true. It doesn't get better than that.
Well, maybe it does get better than that, because how about this? That was great from Rainn Wilson, first of all. But I love this from a couple of years ago. I forget which award show this was. It might have been the Academy Awards, but this is the great actress Cheryl Lee Ralph saying to camera during her acceptance speech. It's so good. I love it.
And to all of you watching here, come close to the screen and listen. People don't have to like you. People don't have to love you. They don't even have to respect you. But when you look in the mirror, you better love what you see. You better love what you see.
Yeah, you better love what you see in the mirror. That's where it starts. I love it. I love it. All right, there are your inspiring quotes and readings for the day. That's the good stuff for Wednesday, the 20th of November. I hope that you're hanging in there. I'm very excited to head out in the woods with Dr. Zatz. That's what it is, Wednesday. And guess what? I'm starting back in therapy with Dr. Adamy. I was so inspired by my conversation with her. I'd been meaning to get back after it. I didn't want to spend the money, but I decided I should do a few sessions to work on some specific stuff, and I'm real excited to see her today. So that's my morning. I hope yours is good, and I hope you get outside. I hope you get some exercise, do some cardio, and let me know what you think I should be adding to the good stuff. What do you live by? What quotes, sayings, prayers, poems, songs, anything? Send it my way. standupwithpete@gmail.com. And now it's time to get to the headlines and clips that I've gathered for you here. First, let's start with the headlines from yesterday. The big news internationally was that Ukraine fired U.S.-made missiles into Russia early yesterday morning. Ukraine launched a volley of American-made ballistic missiles into Russia for the first time. The attack came on the 1,000th day of the war in less than a week after President Biden gave the Ukrainians permission to do so in a major shift of American policy. The strike targeted an ammunition depot in the southwest region of Russia, causing explosions, according to Ukrainian officials. Russian officials claim to have shot down 5 of the 6 missiles. The use of long-range American weapons was a show of force that demonstrated how continued Western support could help Ukraine more easily degrade Russian forces. There's a lot to talk about there. In related news, Germany's defense minister claimed that the severing of fiber optic cables this week in the Baltic Sea was an act of sabotage aimed at Ukraine's European allies. In other international news, pro-democracy leaders were jailed in Hong Kong. A Hong Kong court yesterday sentenced 45 former politicians, journalists, and activists to prison, some for as long as 10 years. The punishments for taking part in an unofficial 2020 straw poll by the opposition, highlighted by a sweeping power of national security law that China imposed to tighten its grip on the territory. So Hong Kong doesn't seem to have any issue or compunction with political imprisonment, and that's pretty scary. In Lebanon, a top U.S. envoy signaled progress in negotiations between Israel and Hezbollah on a ceasefire proposal. In Brazil, authorities said that members of an elite army unit plan to kill Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva shortly before he became president in an effort to keep the former authoritarian leader Jair Bolsonaro in power. All right, now back home to domestic news. In a second attempt, SpaceX failed to catch the giant booster of its Moon and Mars rocket, with the future and former disgraced president in attendance to watch that failure with Elon Musk. So there's that. And yesterday we got more announcements for Trump's Hall of Villains cabinet. He said he'd nominate Howard Lutkin, the chief executive financial services from Cantor Fitzgerald, to be his commerce secretary. He's been his top economic advisor for over the past year, and he's also been leading the president's election transition team, so I guess he pointed it to himself. Lutnick has called for lower corporate taxes and expansion of American energy production and tariffs to protect U.S. industries. And also, he said he was going to nominate Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, to serve as the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. So that's, on brand, makes perfect sense. Another television hack doctor. We learned yesterday that a hacker is said to have downloaded a file containing damaging testimony about Matt Gaetz. So it looks like we're going to find out more about what he did. It looks like he paid underage women for sex. So you would think that would bar him from being the top cop, the attorney general, to lead the Department of Justice. But that is going to be a chaotic confirmation. I think it's fair to say we're going to hear more and more about that. And yesterday, Republicans announced that they're going to try to bar Sarah McBride, who would be the first transgender U.S. lawmaker, from using women's rooms at the Capitol. I mean, they hate trans people, and we elected one, and now they're going to do everything they can to make her uncomfortable, isolate her, and just signal how much hatred they have for trans people. And so we're seeing that play out yesterday, led by Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who's a real class act. I might just talk about her in a new segment called The Bad Stuff, The Bad People, and more. Texas is going to allow Bible-infused lessons in public schools. Residents of Asheville, North Carolina, can now drink their tap water for the first time since Hurricane Helene. Democrats unanimously voted to elect Hakeem Jeffries as their leader in the House. That's big news. He's going to continue to be the minority leader in the House, where he's been very effective. And I read this great news. Bird flu has spread in Hawaii for the first time ever amid growing concerns. The concerns that virus could learn to jump between humans. Ducks and geese on a backyard farm in the island of Oahu, home of the state's capital, tested positive for the virus last week, with the virus likely brought in by migratory birds, apparently. More than 70 of the birds, including 8 ducklings and a swan, have now been slaughtered, but officials fear the virus could still be lurking on the island. Why do they have to say slaughtered when they kill these birds? Humanely, hopefully, because they've contracted a virus. Poor ducklings and a swan. All right, well, those are the headlines that I gathered for you from yesterday. Now let's get to some of the clips that I've pulled. All right, let's check in with the former and future Speaker of the House. It's Christian nationalist Mike Johnson, who yesterday explicitly denied that trans people are a thing, that they exist. Here he is.
Hello, everybody. I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear. I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
So what are these special accommodations?
All right. Those are the facts, according to Christian nationalist Mike Johnson. I have a great conversation coming up tomorrow, probably, with Heath Drusen, who's a great journalist who's covered Christian nationalism much of his career. He's the host of Extremely American, which I highly recommend you listen to both seasons of that podcast if you can stomach it. It's some pretty scary stuff, but that was a big deal story yesterday. Also, yesterday we heard from Trump's incoming border czar, this guy Tom Homan, who fashions himself, I guess, a real son of a bitch. My interpretation is this guy's a real prick. Here he is on Fox News yesterday, threatening people in blue states with prosecution if they hide migrants from ICE.
Real quickly, what happens to a mayor or a local police department chief that is under Democratic leadership that obstructs ICE in your federal agents that are helping get these deportations? What happens to them?
Well, first of all, if they don't want to help us get the hell out of the way, we're going to do it. If I got to send twice the amount of resources to that city, that's what we're going to do. If they would give us access to the jail, that would mean less agents in the community. For them pushing back and not letting us in the jail, it just means more agents are going to be in the community, so they're hurting themselves. Finally, I'll say this. They need to educate themselves. They need to review this. Title 8, United States Code 1324, III. Read about that and don't cross that line because it is a felony to harbor and conceal an illegal alien from ICE. Read the statute. Don't cross that line.
All right, fuck that guy. Like every which way. He's a former police officer, immigration official. He's been a political commentator. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. He used to serve. He was the acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, by the way. And he is a huge advocate of deporting everybody, opposing, obviously, these sanctuary city policies that many blue state cities have. And he was basically the leading proponent of separating children from their families. I mean, you can't think of a worse guy than him in terms of his ideas serving in the administration right now. And so we'll see what happens with that guy and with these sanctuary cities. You can come to my place if you're undocumented. I'll house a few. Will you? Will you protect people? Will you support those who do? It's going to be an interesting and terrifying moment. But we're the ones we've been waiting for, it might seem. So here, by the way, is Trump's pick for Commerce Secretary. This is from the hate rally. His name is Howard Lutnick. I told you a little bit about him in the headlines. But here is his speech or comments at the Madison Square Garden hate rally right before the election.
We must elect Donald J. Trump president because we must crush jihad.
He sounds like a completely normal and calm guy. He wants to crush jihad. And now he is going to crush our economy as the Commerce Secretary, or at least he's going to hand out parts of the United States government, our country, to private interests, is my guess. We'll be keeping our eye on that guy. Luckily, now we've got the great James McGovern to defend and protect us. He is a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts' 2nd District. I've got to reach out and get him on. Here he is yesterday in a floor speech talking about some of these cabinet picks.
What the hell is going on here? And their cabinet picks so far? I mean, these are like beyond insane. Someone who is credibly accused of having sex with an underage girl. Someone who sucks up to foreign dictators and has attracted major concern that they can't be trusted to protect America's secrets from our adversaries. Someone who paid hush money to cover up a sexual assault accusation, to lead our military. He's picked because Donald Trump likes him on Fox News. Someone who says that tap water turns kids gay? I mean, this is the dream team? This is the dream team? Really? I mean, seriously, it would be funny if it weren't so sad.
That's right. Sorry for laughing. But he couldn't be more right about that. When you think about the appointees that Obama made and that Biden made, they're so qualified for the positions that they take. They have the most experience you can imagine. They're not friends of the president necessarily. They're not even often sometimes people that he knows, and he appoints them to cabinet secretaries because they have so much credibility and experience. And they're not, by the way, all white men. So I think so far that's all we've seen, right? Is there anything but a white man that he's appointed so far? All right, here's more from Congressman James McGovern yesterday.
Special and daily basis. And they want to blame woke this and woke that. What's woke about thinking special interests should not be able to buy tax breaks? What's woke about telling Chevron and Exxon that they can't dump toxic chemicals into our air and water? What's woke about thinking it's wrong to give tax breaks to billionaires while the rest of us get screwed?
Yes, that's reality. That's why I'm playing James McGovern, because the guy always makes sense. He makes good floor speeches, good arguments. He's a great leader. And here is one more from McGovern yesterday, about a minute, defending trans people.
They voted for their pocketbooks, and frankly, I don't blame them. You know who I do blame? I blame the billionaires who have rigged our country against working people and spent the last 4 decades squeezing every penny they could out of people. I blame the politicians, including the incoming administration, who have abandoned workers and who have done nothing while the rich get richer and everyone else gets screwed. My friends on the other side, they want to blame trans people. Guess what? Trans people aren't the ones raising people's grocery prices. Big corporations are. They want to blame immigrants. And here's the deal. Immigrants aren't the ones denying health insurance claims, Mr. Speaker. It's the billion-dollar insurance companies that do that on a daily basis. And they want to blame woke this and woke that. What's woke about thinking special interests should not be able to buy tax breaks?
Yes, I think I might have played those clips out of order. The second one should have been the third one. But you get the idea. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to go back and edit that out. It isn't easy doing this. That was great. James McGovern, well done. I've got to get him on the show here to chat about it all, because he's one of those people that really fights and is not owned by special interests and is a great communicator. He's only become better and better over the years. I once spent a good amount of time just hanging out in his office before he finally kicked me out because I was the guest who wouldn't leave. Actually, he didn't. I think he just left. And then his staff was like, "Sir, we're going to turn off the lights. Can you leave?" I've done that a few times in my life. Doesn't feel great when you realize what's happened. Okay, now moving on to, and finally, here's Ana Navarro talking on CNN last night to other panelists about the history of the past precedents for how you could get confirmed, at least as Attorney General. Take it away, Anna.
Remember, let me just say this. I remember, you and I are old enough to remember when Bill Clinton had 2 Attorney General nominees, Zoe Baird and Kimba Wood, who were eliminated, who had to withdraw because they had employed illegal nannies. Matt Gaetz is accused of sleeping with a girl who's almost young enough to need a nanny. And Republicans are saying there's nothing to see.
Wow.
Remember.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. That's important context, what she's saying. Remember that? Remember back in the day when if you had even the smallest skeleton, just a little tiny, finger bone in the closet, you would not be confirmed. Good stuff from Ana Navarro reminding us of that context. All right, finally, it's the great Trey Crowder. I love comedian Trey Crowder. He's been on the show many times. I got to get him back. He's blown up over the years, and he makes these great videos. And I play pretty much every one of them, usually about 3 minutes long. He's sitting there in his car, and here he is. I haven't seen this yet, so you may hear me laughing at the times I really guffaw. Perhaps we'll see. Here's Trey Crowder on Trump's somehow even worse cabinet picks.
Hey, y'all, I think before this most recent round of Trump's cabinet appointees was announced, a lot of us were like, I remember how it went last time. How much more stupid and bad could it be? And now that they've been announced, we're like, oh, quite a bit more, actually. Okay, didn't see that coming. The bar was in hell, and yet they've limboed right under it. This is great. It does seem worse, though. Attorney General Matt Gaetz is going to be pursuing critical criminal justice initiatives like lowering the age of consent and getting Diddy a pardon. The new Secretary of Defense is a Fox News host, which, if you need to get support for your blood money sham war, a good place to start is by getting America's white dads all pissed off for no good reason. He's probably great for that job. Homeland Security, I assume one of Trump's advisors was like, "Sir, we need to find someone strong enough to take on these terrorist dogs." And Trump was like, "What dogs? What? Who's that crazy bitch that likes to shoot puppies again?" Just let her do it. That's fine. You guys remember when Michelle Obama had the audacity to say that maybe American school children should eat marginally fewer cheeseburgers, and then all of our country's graviest citizens lost their minds about it? Yeah, well, now all those same people are convinced that a brain-wormed carcass collector is going to make America healthy again. How about that? The border czar is a guy named Tom Homan, which, come on, that's clearly a made-up name for a robot posing as a man. I mean, because actual human empathy would really complicate the plans they have for the immigrants. So I get it, but his name is Homan? Okay. Well, who are his undersecretaries? Yasama Hamasapian and Guy Personman? Come on, dude. Vivek and Musk have been given the made-up job of improving the government by vaporizing 75% of it, because that's how things totally actually work in the real world all the time. I mean, what's next? They're gonna put Alex Jones and Roseanne in charge of the U.S. Department of Staying Calm and Making Sense. It's bad. It's hard to be optimistic. All I can really come up with right now is the hope that maybe the unstoppable force that is their short-sighted and rage-fueled scheming is about to slam head first into the immovable object that is their fundamental dysfunction and incompetence. I mean, think about all the chaos in the Republican House over the past couple of years. The only thing that lunatics like MTG and Boebert hate more than the rest of us is each other. They're all megalomaniacs and narcissists. They don't play well together. And we all know the only people they really listen to are billionaires and corporations. Well, what happens when some of them don't want this stuff either? Walmart's already out here in public going, hey, so those tariffs, yeah, here's the thing. We kind of rely heavily on cheap Chinese bullshit to continue to obscenely enrich ourselves by preying on the American populace. So, yeah, those ain't going to work for us, Chief. Like, do y'all think that Big Pharma's just going to stand by and let RFK Jr. replace a lot of their biggest moneymakers with raw milk and vibes? And I'm not rooting for Walmart or Big Pharma. Everybody sucks here. I'm just saying there's going to be turmoil. There's going to be infighting. And I'm just hoping that plus the inherently glacial pace of bureaucracy together can maybe gum up the works long enough for the rest of us to survive this waking nightmare. Okay? That's the best I can do right now. Love y'all.
Love you too, Trey Crowder. Yeah, the best he can do is good. It's always good, and happy to share that one with you. All right, well, those are the clips and the good stuff, the headlines. That's the first segment of the show, the first two segments of the show, and now it's time to get to the guests. I've got two very, very smart guys joining me today. Of course, Dr. Arthur Caplan is one of the most respected bioethicists in the country. He's now at NYU. Before that, he was at Penn. He's written so many books and articles. Caplan is great today and really important conversation, so you don't want to skip that. But I'm going to start with Professor Jeff Jarvis right now because he went viral after his appearance on CNN, calling out MSNBC and CNN and more. I absolutely loved his appearance. They're scared to book him on those networks, but I'm never scared to have the great Jeff Jarvis here. He is a regular, he is a friend and a mentor. He's a journalist, a professor, a public speaker, an author, a former television critic. Of course, I discovered him when I heard Howard Stern talking about him because Howard respected his work, and Jarvis was one of the first serious people to respect Howard. So that tells you a little bit about his background and past. Jeff has just written and published 2 new books. He's working on a new one. The guy never stops. Go learn more about him at buzzmachine.com. Buzzmachine.com. Follow him on all the social media networks. He's great on social media, and all those links are in today's show notes and every day's show notes. So let's get it started with Jeff Jarvis. And the first thing you're going to hear, this is him on CNN on Monday night, and then we launch into our conversation. And in this clip, Jeff is talking about Joe and Mika, who went and met with Donald Trump, and he led the criticism, which is why he's invited on CNN. Credit to CNN for having him on the panel. He's talking to Scott Jennings and others on the panel when he says it was just a few weeks ago when we finally heard Scarborough saying the word fascist, and I cut him off here a little bit, but he said it was just a couple of weeks ago, and then he picks up right here on CNN Monday night, and then we jump into our conversation.
That Joe Scarborough was calling Donald Trump a fascist. And I was grateful for that because he had the courage to do that when the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and NPR did not face the fascism at the door. And now it's inside, and he goes and visits. And what's so upsetting about that is obviously I've identified myself now as a liberal, and NBC was all we had. The New York Times and the Washington Post has angered liberals tremendously through the coverage. CNN tries to be balanced and do this. MSNBC was the last liberal outpost of media. And I know you might start laughing at me. The New York Times, the Washington Post are liberal. We'll disagree about that. But MSNBC was that. And there was no good reason to go and pay obeisance in advance. Nothing journalistic came out of this visit. They came and it was all off the record. Oh, we're going to ask him for an interview. Obviously, Trump's going to want the airtime. That's fine. No value came. And they went on bended knee. And it was, I think, in the end, a betrayal of the staff at MSNBC who do still criticize Donald Trump, who now feel that they are in some jeopardy because of that, because he has threatened the press. And so I think that it was a bad moment for Joe and Mika. And I'm going to think that MSNBC for me, starts about 4 p.m.
Wow, Jeff Jarvis. That was ballsy, man. I can't believe you weren't on Morning Joe this morning.
Oh, I can believe I'm not on Morning Joe ever.
That's the problem, is that people won't go on and criticize those shows because then they won't get invited on, including other people currently working at MSNBC. So the fact that you did that, also criticized CNN while on CNN, that does not happen enough. Well done. Very impressed.
What the heck? I'm old. I'm not going to be on much more. Might as well throw in the towel.
I loved it, and I love to see you there. And I wonder, just before we get into everything, because we haven't talked on the record since the election, I just wanted to ask you, just staying on that appearance, what did you hear?
What did I hear?
What was the reaction to your appearance? I got death threats.
Yeah, it was good. It was good reaction. Jennings on the show was going to growl. He sneered the word professor at me, even though he's taught at Harvard, I want to add. And I teach at public schools. No, I think the reaction was good. I think people are generally nonplussed at what Joe and Mika did. What do you think?
I didn't pay too much attention to the reaction, but those who were critical, I was on the side of them with. But I think there hasn't been enough criticism. I guess it's just, I don't know how to look at it. I don't know how to look at anything right now. People's reactions are not necessarily always what you would think they would be. I think we're still in this catatonic state of shock to some extent, even though it wasn't a total surprise.
No. I mean, what's fascinating to me, Pete, is that I tweeted this a little while ago, that this time we're not going to see, and this is borne out, a Trump bump. We're seeing a Trump slump in liberal media. And I think we're just too exhausted. We're just too depressed. We just don't want to hear right now much more. And there's nothing we can do because we lost it all. So I think that's where it is. And in that, so here come Joe and Mika. And on the one hand, I'll be empathetic to this extent. I understand that Brian Stelter at CNN did reporting saying that the reason they did it is because they're scared of retribution. I get that. But for the sake of their own lifeboat, they threw overboard the credibility of the show and thus themselves. They affected the network. And I think they betrayed their colleagues who are also in peril in a Trump age. And we're safe. We went and kissed the ring. We're okay now. But for the rest of you, Joy Reid, Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, Steph Rule, see how you do. And I don't think it was a very generous act. And it certainly was not a journalistic act because they learned nothing from him. It was off the record. And so what's the big deal? Joe promised, we're going to ask for an interview. Yeah, like that's going to be hard. Of course he'll do it, especially now. So I was just supremely disappointed. As I said on the clip, it was only 2 weeks ago today that Joe Scarborough was still calling Donald Trump a fascist. And now he goes into the den of the fascists.
I think it's entirely accurate and fair. In history, in America, I guess elsewhere, journalists and their access to people in power, world leaders, the President of the United States, American-journalist relationship, sometimes it went past the line. I think was the former Washington Post editor was friends with JFK. Was that the one? But generally speaking, reporters don't have tete-a-tetes and long conversations necessarily with the subject in power. I just seemed really obsequious and unethical, and this is where we're at. So nobody's found.
Well, I'll disagree to this extent. I think it's the virus is broader than that in the sense that access journalism is the coin of the realm, and people want access. And so they have conversations we don't know they have. And to some extent, I understand that's how the business is done. But it doesn't mean that when you can see it happening in front of you, that it breeds trust. It does not.
Yeah.
I can't, I forget who it was today. There were some really good newsletters that came out who said, how can we ever judge Joe's judgment of Trump again? Either way. He's either going to try to prove himself to Trump or to us.
Yeah. I think that's all fair, and we'll see what happens. I guess maybe they're just trying to protect their high lifestyle, really. They don't want the DOJ to come after them. They don't want to get audited. They don't want to have their club memberships suddenly withdrawn. Those two people are absolutely wealthy. I've never been comfortable with a husband and a wife anchoring a flagship morning show on a major network. I've always thought that was gross.
It's a 1930s movie about radio. I think there was one. The Bickersons. It was the show The Bickersons. Yeah, I agree. And it's very Ted Cruz. What Trump and his people said about Joe and what they said about Mika.
Right.
And then to go and pay obeisance is just noxious.
There's one more comment on it is Joe Scarborough and 1,000 other men, including myself, love to point to the fact and make fun of and ridicule the beta cuckness of the Ted Cruz, of the Marco Rubio, of the so many J.D. Vance, people who came and kissed the ring and on bended knee. Joe Scarborough would love to criticize their masculinity or lack of it because he would thought they would try to get under their skin. And it's just, I wish somebody's got to dig up those clips of Scarborough questioning the emptiness of the Kevin McCarthy and all the rest who Trump destroyed personally and professionally. And then they turned around and went and kissed the ring. They should find those videos because I'm pretty sure he did a lot of that.
He absolutely did. And the real coin of the realm to Trump is humiliation. You're absolutely right. It's that picture that went around this week of RFK Jr. being force-fed a quarter pounder. I even having nothing better to do in life and trying to procrastinate. I even calculated the grams of fat, calories, and sodium and sugar that he was eating.
Have you just stop there for 1 second in that picture? I haven't talked to anybody about this. Might as well be a man. Have you looked at somebody actually made a graphic of some of the men that are around him, but just specifically Elon Musk and RFK, and Trump historically has surrounded himself with like men who are credibly accused of or definitely are and have admitted to being horribly abusive men, in some cases criminals. He's point Matt Gaetz, in the past Corey Lewandowski, Jason Miller, Rudy Giuliani. There are so many bad dudes. One of his best friends was Jeffrey Epstein. It's almost, Jeff, you don't have to be qualified as a guy with a terrible record with women, but it definitely doesn't hurt you. They're saying Pete Hegseth has some accusations in the past. Isn't that the cover charge to the Trump administration?
Yeah, because it gives him, it is literally cover. It says, I'm not the only one. See, everybody else around me, you can't criticize me. Look at yourself.
Brett Kavanaugh.
But it's part of that humiliation. I think he holds things over them that make it easy to humiliate. Yeah. But I also think it's something about trying to erase all norms, all senses of decency, all senses of morality. So I made a point of showing off on CNN of saying that I've been rereading Hannah Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism.
I want to play that clip now. It's, I think, 30 seconds. I think this is it.
I just reread Hannah Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism, and I cannot tell you how relevant it is to today. What has gone on in totalitarian regimes before is what is happening in this country right now. It is fascism. His generals called him fascist. Joe Scarborough called him fascist. And now the fascist is in charge. And it is journalism's job to cover it that way, not to back off and say, okay, that's it, we lost. Let the fascism happen. No.
All right, that's a clip that everybody needs to go watch the entirety of it because Jeff was saying that right to Scott Jennings' face. He had him on a 2-shot. So if you're entertained by that kind of shit, then by all means watch it. But it's more important than the entertainment factor of it. You are speaking to a man who doesn't hear that kind of argument made so acutely because you, like me, have been studying these authoritarian regimes throughout history and all the authors and journalists, historians who have covered them. And you do a lot better job at articulating it and debating and bringing it up at the right times than I do and most do. So pick up on that clip and what you were maybe about to say about Hannah Arendt.
Let me read from a little bit of The Origins of Totalitarianism, if I may.
Please take as much time as you'd like.
Vulgarity, with its cynical dismissal of respected standards and accepted theories, carried with it a frank admission of the worst and a disregard for all pretenses, which were easily mistaken for courage and a new style of life. What a temptation to flaunt extreme attitudes in the hypocritical twilight of double moral standards, to wear publicly the mask of cruelty, if everybody was patently inconsiderate and pretended to be gentle, to parade wickedness in a world not of wickedness, but of meanness. I'm reading for the 5th time now. It is so relevant to today. Edward, I'm forgetting his name suddenly, the columnist, the U.S. editor for the Financial Times, Ed Luce, had a good column today acknowledging that the goal of the Trumpists is to destroy democracy. At last, good, they're noticing that. He goes back to Caligula for the model of that. You don't have to go back so far. You can look at other totalitarians around the world, and it's not hard to study. I'm frustrated with fellow journalists that I'm frustrated with myself that I spent many years in the field not reading philosophy. I was delighted to see you say, by the way, that one part of your daily routine is reading philosophy. What are you reading these days?
Every day I read Stoicism and Buddhism, really, pretty much. I love how these young, smart, innovative authors, internet age authors, have repackaged those ancient philosophies, as we all do generation to generation. And Ryan Holiday has done a really good job at that. So he's just repackaged all the Stoicism and made it into modern day and relatable. And so I love that. And anything else I can get my hands on. I've been digging into that stuff my whole life. But why is it important relative to the political situation?
It's a combination of philosophy and history that I think matters together.
Yeah.
I think to understand that we're not so special. This isn't so new. There is context. There is a way to understand this. And so to you and your readers, I would commend The Origins of Totalitarianism, particularly chapters 10 and 11. That it's a long book, and the first parts may not be as relevant. And obviously it's about Nazism and Stalinism. So it might seem in some ways irrelevant, and the parallels aren't necessarily clear, don't need to be, but the lessons are clear, and the philosophy is clear. And that includes noxious philosophy. That includes faux philosophy and attempts at philosophy. We've talked in the past about Tescrial, the transhumanism and effective altruism and long-termism that guides the likes of Peter Thiel and Sam Altman and Elon Musk. I think we need to understand those things too. We need to understand racism and sexism and fascism to be able to understand this world today, to know what we're fighting against.
Yeah. We also need to understand the people who don't understand all of that.
Yeah.
And I interviewed this Trumper the other day. I said, you have to post it. But I increasingly think that the problem is the word democracy and understanding history. And sometimes you got to meet people where they're at, including me, about a wide range of issues. Talk to me in a way that I can understand. And in this case, I think if you ask some people, you say, do you want traditional ways of electing people, or do you just want to let this one guy be in charge because nothing else works? We never get anything done. We just need a strong man to get shit done. And I think a huge percentage of Americans would say, yes, enough with whatever we've been doing. Name it democracy, name it government, whatever. We just need a guy to come in and clean house, send out the bad people, keep the good people, fix all the problems, and then we'll be good. What do you think of that?
One of the shocks that I got when I was much younger studying World War II and the Nazis was I presumed that any modern movement or civilization would salute the flag of democracy and then corrupt it. But that's not the case with Nazism. They thought democracy was the ruin of the country, of the world, and they wanted to get rid of it. I thought, oh, hell, that exists. And I'm very disturbed. I talked to a public broadcasting station that did a lot of audience research not too long ago, and they found that, and these are public radio people, right, in a cosmopolitan city, and they found that the word democracy is a turnoff. And that's scary, but it goes to what you just said, Pete. I think people say, I'm tired, this is not working, let's throw it out and go what's easy rather than fighting for what we have. Now, I don't know if I've talked about this before on the show, but I developed this theory of mine. That's going to sound like it's highfalutin. It's not. I learned something from someone and then deduced from it a lesson, which is that conservatism and liberalism, progressivism, have flopped 180 degrees. That conservatives used to conserve institutions. They wanted to preserve the institutions. They wanted to revert back to the institutions of the past. Present day, air quotes, conservatives, that is to say the right wing, want to destroy institutions. They want to tear down not just government, but also free and fair elections and democracy and education and medicine and science and on. So that puts the progressives, who normally want to change institutions, into the position of having to defend and conserve those institutions. Now, I think the best way to do that is to change them, is to update them, is to make them functional and good. But that's the bind we're stuck in now, where we, the progressives, who wanted to advance and change and bring new things and help more people, now have to first look at defending the institutions that we didn't necessarily think were working well ourselves. But the risk is that if we go in too far and saying, yeah, it wasn't working too well, then all we do is aid in their destruction of what we value.
I wonder if we shouldn't use the phrase tear down in terms of the institutions, because what it would seem like is when they say they're going to get rid of or tear down, what if it's just they just populate the current institutions with their own people, or they just rename the institution and they don't change anything and then they take credit for it? That's one of the things that Republicans love to do, vote against something, then take credit for it. Or the other thing is say they're going to do something, not to do it, and say they did it. That happened at our school board. It happened with the wall, Trump's border wall. And so there's a lot of different ways to fuck with your brain, with your mind, and the public in terms of what you're going to do with those institutions. Take them over, repopulate them, rename them, rebrand them. But they're still going to be there, I feel, getting federal tax money and affecting our lives and controlling our lives the way that, speaking of which, conservatives said they never wanted them to. Now more than ever, because they're going to be populated by Christian nationalists.
It's also, and I think I've said this in the past too, it's not about ideology even. There's ideologies. There's racism and there's sexism and there's anti-Semitism and there's anti-Islam. Yes. But I think what's going on now is it doesn't matter what the belief is. It doesn't matter what you're saying. It's we're in this together. And it's about belonging to this air quotes movement.
So what do you think that looks like, this current day movement? New York Times Daily did an interesting thing interviewing some of the women activists who were part of the women's movement back in 2017, the Women's March and so on, and the resist movement. And they're all like, we're out, we're tired, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And I don't know what people are going to do. I don't think people are going to march in the street. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be traditional practices and tactics and strategies, but it's also maybe too soon to even talk about it because people are still trying to figure it out. But how do you see the reaction to Trump now that he won the popular vote, it would seem, and the electoral vote, even though people keep saying that he won democracy with all the gerrymandered districts and electoral college? But still, the bottom line is this is the situation we're in. We know how many people voted for him. So I'm hard to believe. And we feel defeated by our neighbors or friends, and everywhere we look, like, oh, you're one of them, aren't you?
Both those who voted for Trump and those who stayed home and didn't bother to come out to defend democracy, I would say. And yeah, there's a few reactions. One is they want it all. And so sit back and see what they do with it, because there's nothing much we can do, and let's see them destroy it. And that's that. And that feels not very good. The other is to look at what Mark Elias and company are doing with 800 lawyers ready to fight in the courts. That depresses me quickly because how many judgeships are left on the sane side and how many are on the ruined side? And the bad guys know better than we do about how to manipulate the courts. So the only thing that stands between us, I think, and the utter destruction of democracy is a few aging judges.
Right.
Fewer by the day. And obviously, Trump and his Senate are going to throw in tons of people who were awful in Federalist Society. So there's that. Another strategy is the more normalizing strategy of politics is to say, oh, we have the midterms and they'll screw up. People will get mad because people are fickle, and we'll gain back something then, the House. And then we'll at least be able to stop them from the worst of it.
Yeah.
But I think the worst of it will already be done. It's just a continuation of what was 4 years ago. So it's hard. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau says, enough of you people, I'm going to cut down on immigration.
Did he? Is that a recent development?
He did a little kind of Mr. Rogers sitting on a chair talking to the world saying, we have too many now. We're okay. Sorry.
You know, all you people that are thinking about leaving, good riddance. I'm going to make fun of you on the way out. And then when they grab me to throw me in the camp, I'm going to say, wait. How funny is it going to be when I walk into the camp barracks and I'm going to see you and you're going to see me and we're going to be our gray uniforms. I'm going to go, Jarvis. You're going to go, Dominic. Then we're going to put and then what we're going to do is we're going to get a plant. We're going to have a little plant that we're going to grow together, and each day we're going to take care of that plant, and that's going to bring us our joy, because that's what we have to do. Come on, this is Viktor Frankl. We've been here before, humanity, that is. Maybe not us, But what are you turning to? You're at this point in your life, in your career, in everything, in your family. What are you turning to? I want to say spiritually to you, but I don't want to make you uncomfortable.
So my sister was a good child. She's the Reverend Cynthia Jarvis. She's a Presbyterian minister.
Oh, cool.
I'm the heathen. And
me too.
I don't know if you say officiated over, but she led a memorial service last week for an old editor of mine at People magazine, Lanny Jones. And it really struck me, Pete. I was in the Princeton Chapel. Lanny was the class of 66 in Princeton. And it was jammed. There were probably 250 people there. If I conk over tomorrow, I'm not sure it's going to be worth the trip for you coming out wherever it is. I don't have anything like that. And it's a little late to start trying. So I felt my mortality, the mortality of my social being, greatly in that moment. And so I wish I could turn around and say, what I'm going to value is family and friends. Most of my family is gone now, and I don't have friends around here, and I have you, and I have a few like you, and that's kind of it. So, and then the other thing is, all right, so I've now announced that I've retired from CUNY. I'm now a visiting professor at Stony Brook University. I'm now a distinguished fellow at Montclair State University. I have another project coming up, and I'm writing a book right now about the history of the linotype and the long century of mass media. And all that sounds good as a way to keep busy, but it's really hard to concentrate. It is really hard to sit down and pull out these papers and get the little facts down. And when I do it, I feel accomplishment, and that distracts me, and that makes me happier. But it's really difficult. How about you? How's your day to day?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I'm very much focused. I've made a bunch of drastic changes in my life, even recently. And I just have this practice that I have every day, 20 minutes of reading, of writing, of exercise, and of meditation. And I don't do it every day. I try to do it every day. I do at least some of it.
You just don't want to be obnoxious.
Because I don't want to. No, I do want to be obnoxious about it because I want to proselytize about it because it's such a game changer for me. So yeah, I want to walk down the street and hold up a sign and be like, do this, do cardio, get outside, cuddle an animal, hang out with a stranger, make new friends. Like I do want to do that. I think that's going to be my purpose now in this.
How does that mix in with your political self? Do you think that there are things we can do and must do and stay on the case? Or no, that's frankly a waste of time and we've just got to sit back and concentrate on other things we find more important? Well, how do you mix those two? I
don't know what's going to be most effective, but I am a fighter. I can't not fight. It's a huge part of me. If I stopped doing that, I think I would be, I get involved. I want to help people in all different kinds of ways. For a lot of people, that's their profession as a caretaker and healthcare or something, or education or elder care or whatever. But for me, it's like fighting for marginalized communities is something I want to continue to do. So maybe if it's not media, then maybe I'm working at some nonprofit or something. I don't know. But I think it's continuing to do this, but changing it. And more importantly, as you mentioned, community. I built a community around this podcast. And that's
you
more
really
important.
That's who's going to show up at your funeral. Not, we hope it doesn't happen for a very long time, but yes.
My funeral is going to be not as big as yours because I'm producing yours now. Based on your comments, I'm going to bring Howard in, but I'm going to make it my mission. And I also know so many people that you've touched, the way you've touched me. So if it's me and Juliet Jeske and that young lady who I talked to is the booker at News Nation yesterday who said, oh, I know Jeff Jarvis when I recommended her for the show. She said, he was my professor. I loved him. And I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands of other people. And so I'm going to be producing your memorial service. I'll be emceeing it. We're going to have speakers. Do you want to do it while you're still alive?
Yeah, sure.
All right. If you become terminal and you still have your wits about you, we'll go. And if not, we'll do it when you're dead.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. It'll be fun.
Are you ever going to move into an old folks home?
Oh, gosh.
I'm trying to envision that.
I don't know. Maybe because I like people a lot, but maybe not because I love nature a lot. So I could see me living in a cabin making maple syrup on my horse.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd make the syrup on the horse. I would be chopping wood, living with my brother in the Catskills. I think my brother and I will probably end up alone together. Two old brothers bickering and making soup.
And all the town talks about them and wonders about them. Yeah, I think that works.
Maybe. I don't know, man. I don't think too much. I try not to think too far ahead in the future.
Well, you're younger than I am.
And
even though I have more hair than you do.
Yeah, you look great.
Like, the best thing about being on TV, the single best thing about being on TV is that 9 times out of 10, when I'm sitting in the hair and makeup chair, they say to me, nobody else ever says this to me. They say, you have great hair.
Yeah.
I don't mean to rub it in, Pete, but it's a moment of pride.
I think I've said it plenty of times. It's basically all I care about. All right. I'll let you go. We'll continue the conversation. I hope you'll still visit with me throughout all of this, no matter what. I always love to get your thoughts on everything. And I
love it. It is a highlight. I'm really glad when you come calling.
We're all your friends, too. People love you. We did a survey to do our next live show in Vegas, and you were like top 3 people that people wanted to come and be there. So
wow.
Maybe we'll fly you out.
That'd be cool.
And you can hang out with us and make all these friends.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. So
Vegas. Right. I'm trying to think about Vegas in the current Weltanschauung.
Yeah. It'll be fine for a little while longer.
It's kind of, Vegas is depressing no matter when.
Yeah, exactly. Don't say anything. We got a lot of Vegas listeners. We don't want to depress them.
Okay. I love you guys. Love you, but.
Yeah, they could be in trouble.
Think you can get Ronnie the limo driver?
Oh, God. All right. I'm going to press N and then we'll keep talking. All right, there you go. My conversation with Jeff Jarvis. What did you think? Please go let him know on the social media outlets that he's on, including Blue Sky and X. He's still there, I believe, and all of the rest. He's very present online. He's a huge believer in the internet, and he is now he's a supporter, subscriber of this show. I'll have him stop by the Hangout Thursday night. How about that? I'll invite Jeff to stop by. We'll see if he can make it. That'll be fun. Who else would you like to see at the Hangout? How about Arthur Caplan? Yeah. Wow, he is next on the show, and he is always so good. Such an important guest to have. Talking about bioethics, I think, is a really important conversation to be having and hosting. So I'm always happy when I get the most respected bioethicist potentially ever in the country. He is currently at NYU, where he founded the Division of Medical Ethics at their School of Medicine. Before that, he was at UPenn, where he founded their School of Bioethics. He's the author and editor of 35 books, more than 860 papers and peer-reviewed journals, and he's a regular commentator on bioethics here and so many other media outlets, so I'm always happy to have him join me. We've become friends over the years, as I have with many of my guests, so I always have fun with him, and we have a great back-and-forth exchange. He is on social media still. I think he left Twitter, but you can find him on other media outlets that I will link to in the show notes. Let's take it away with a very important conversation with Dr. Arthur Caplan. Mika and Joe, they met with Trump.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they're restarting. They said they got to clean the slate and restart. What do you think of that?
Good.
Okay, well, welcome back. I'm very happy to see you, and there's so much to talk with you about, unfortunately. I wish we could just talk about the Eagles.
I'm happy to do that.
I know, but I'm not going to do it. We're going to talk about the good stuff, the stuff that...
Happy to talk about the quarterback situation in the New York Giants. Yeah, sure.
Nope, not doing it.
Nope, not going.
Wrong place, wrong channel. I hope that you get booked.
Jake Paul and his battle against Mike Tyson.
Can a 59-year-old man ever beat a 27-year-old man at anything physically?
I'm trying to think.
Like that?
Drooling.
Yeah. Just a drooling competition. And go. All right. Well, go ahead. You said I heard you say you had something.
Yeah, there was some news today that there's an august body called the National Academy of Sciences and Medicine that is a private entity created by Abraham Lincoln a long time ago to advise Congress and the administration on matters of science and medicine. And its president, a woman whose name I forget, just issued a statement as we began to talk that said, well, I'm going to paraphrase it. Don't bother us scientists. We are apolitical. We are neutral. We just pursue the facts. And we hope to be able to advise the new administration on factual information. And that follows a statement pretty similar by the American Association of Pediatrics president saying, we stand for fact-based advice and we hope to work with the new administration to give them facts. And I heard both of these statements and thought, are you kidding me? You know, when's the last time somebody tried to plead scientific objectivity and neutrality to get out of political responsibility? Nuremberg, at the trial, the scientists put on trial said, oh, well, you know, we're just objective people. We do what the politicians and the experts on values and the experts on morals, we do what they tell us to do. By the way, this was also said at later Communist Party trials, looking back at the Lysenko era of phony biology, leading Stalin to starve a third of his country to death. The point is this: science isn't neutral. Science isn't value-free. And going into the Trump administration, which built its political campaign on anti-science, lying, miscommunication, distortion, and is confirming all that with its current cabinet appointments in the area, to try and slink back under the blanket of we're just objective people, don't bother us, don't pester us, who are we? Are you kidding me? I mean, look, the place that's going to be there for some resistance to bad medicine, bad science in the next administration, which I think there will be plenty of ample opportunities to confront, sadly, are going to be scientists and doctors, and they better be ready to be advocates, and they better be ready to speak up, and they better be ready to be not value neutral.
So help me understand what it means, why they're saying this, what value neutral means. You say science isn't objective. Give me an example of how this would play out, how it has played out, or I mean,
well, what they're saying is,
couldn't both things be true? It's not objective. This is the truth.
Yes, and at the same time, let me just be clear what they're saying. Don't come after us. Don't defund us. Don't not appoint us to anything, because we're not political and we don't take sides. We just tell you the facts. You know, here's how many centimeters a tadpole is, and here's the speed of light, and that's what we do. Well, look, first of all, people come into science because they care about things. They're not value-free. They say, my brother's got cystic fibrosis. I want to cure cystic fibrosis. People come in and say, I want to build something that can help slow down climate change because I care about the climate. You pick the area that you work in because you value it or you care about it or it matters to you. Secondly, huge swaths of science are, of course, value-laden at the same time, quote-unquote, objective. They're value-laden because you come into fights and controversies. Some people might say, oh, the ocean isn't warming that fast. Somebody else might say, I'm freaking out. I see dead species everywhere. I think it's warming pretty fast. So maybe the evidence is a little bit uncertain, and you come down on one side or the other. Why? Because you value preserving the species over not caring about the species. So values can drive you to lend more weight to certain kinds of evidence because you care. Look, here's a fight that's going on right now. My colleague at NYU, Jonathan Haidt, he's the guy who's got this thing going about let's get the cell phones out of schools, and cell phones and the internet are causing a lot of damage to kids. Some of my science friends have come back and said, well, you know, the science doesn't really prove that, Jonathan. It's not quite there to say it's all bad. Okay, but how about this? Something's wrong with the kids. Taking their cell phones away in school isn't going to harm or hurt them. If there's some evidence that it might be a problem, you make the value judgment and say, take the darn things out of the schools. Yeah, it's underdetermined by the evidence, but there's some evidence. So let's go with that as enough. Decisions about what's enough, what's sufficient, when do you act, all value-laden. And, let me add one other thing. Sure. Didn't we hear our soon-to-be President Trump talking about things like the immigrants are poisoning our blood? They actually have hereditary traits that lead them to be rapists and murderers. Should I just say, oh, well, that's an opinion? Or do I have a duty as a scientist to say, that's eugenic crap? And there's no evidence for it, and there hasn't been any evidence for it. And it's my obligation to speak up and correct dangerous lies that helped get him elected because he scared people into thinking they were eating the dogs and the cats. That's how bad their genes are. They're uncontrollable. So this notion that we're going to have neutral science, neutral medicine, neutral public health, keep the money coming to us and don't bother us.
So your advice to any of these individual scientists, much less entire organizations that are putting out statements on their behalf, is what?
Speak up, get ready to advocate, get ready to visit local communities, counteract baloney that goes out there. Make sure that you are ready to explain what you do. Get into the local newspaper, get into the local school board, be an advocate for those who are being oppressed by phony science, bigotry, and hate. Be an activist.
What it is, however, not I suppose, terribly uncalculated. I think if I'm hearing you right, it's not uncalculated. The reason why any organization might be saying something, I'm just, without knowing anything, very little at least, is my guess is funding. A huge percentage of funding comes from the federal government. NIH, I think, specifically National Institute of Health, funds most research, if I'm not mistaken. So is that the play, that they need to continue to get funding and the federal government provides a lot of it? And now in charge of the federal government, aliens.
I wish. They're probably more humane.
A dolphin-headed human.
Chimeras, they call them. Mixed species.
Chimeras.
Minotaurs.
Chimeras, centaurs. I mean, I got to get the funding. This chimera is going to be the one signing off on it. I better not push him the wrong way.
I am leaning in that direction, shall we say. I think it's a CYA preemptive strike. Let us do our science in peace and we won't bother you.
Right. What other sources of funding, are there that wouldn't then also, aren't all sources of funding also biased and value laden, as you say?
Well, sure. So, look, two other points. One is, to get funded, you have to persuade people, whoever it is, the funders, that it's worth funding. That's a value judgment. There's no algorithm or form that says, oh, yes, this is objective enough to do. You have to say, gee, this guy, remember the old William Proxmire prizes he used to give out, the Golden Fleece Award for things he thought were stupid to do research on? Well, maybe there are things that are stupid to do research on, but that's a value judgment. We don't have to agree with everything he made fun of. But somebody might say, gee, in this day and age, research on HPV and why we don't use vaccines there to control cervical cancer more when it's been eliminated in Australia and Scotland might be worth funding. And somebody else is going to say, you know what? That's a sexually transmitted disease. We don't fund anything that has to do with sex. See you later. You don't think there's a value judgment there? Not you, but audience? Come on.
I mean, if it is me, there's a value judgment on everything. That's why I'm not in charge of any of it.
And your answer is, so yes, the funders make decisions. And also, they set priorities. Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, when they're non-government. But even within the government, they say, this is what we're funding. We're going to study the effect of horrible admissions policies on poor white men. Send your grants to us and we'll look for that research. I mean, they set the priorities. It's not like I sit around and say, gee, well, like I said, I'd like to get funded to study why HPV vaccination has failed here. I'm not even going to bother to send that one in. I know it's going to get kicked out by people who are, let's say, nervous about adolescent sexuality.
And what a shame, because as you have taught us over the years and many others, that vaccine is a miracle. HPV and
cancer preventing vaccine.
It's a vaccine young girls get, 11 or 12 years old, suggested, and it prevents them from getting cancer.
And there is proof that it works, because the cancer rate after aggressive vaccination, Australia and Scotland, almost zero.
Cervical cancer, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And that was on your list of issues to talk about, something about regarding HPV specifically.
Yeah. Well, that's just an example. But let's wander toward our nominee to be in charge of our health.
Well, let me ask you just a broad question about RFK that some people seem to be, interested in his views on some things that are there's wide agreement on. So I'm not talking about fluoride. I'm not talking about vaccines. Yeah. Believe me, we'll get to them with Dr. Caplan. But the idea of preservative-laden food, this is something like President Obama tried to get this food out of school lunches. We know that these preservatives are not healthy for you. And we know that, I guess the main primary thing is, where does the government provide them specifically to children in schools? So let's say that the science is sound on that. Preservatives are bad for us, and RFK wants to get them out. With everything that you know regarding funding, regarding these big companies, in this case, food makers, I mean, he's not going to be able to push back against the multi-billion-dollar food makers that have government contracts. If that were the case, that would have happened a long time ago. But they give money to every single congressman. And
No. They give money to every red state congressman now in control of Congress, whose states depend on the agriculture, corn, to make high fructose syrup that keeps them all viable. Anybody who thinks that this knucklehead is going to sit down with a president who has fast food, lunch, dinner, and breakfast, is obese, is a person who is beholden to the red state people who elected him, who basically all got corporate donations from Big Ag and Big Food, and by the way, who we might well say have banned in 2 states any attempt to replace meat and production of meat with artificial cell-grown meat. That's our good friend DeSantis. And the state of Alabama as well. They've already said, no, can't get rid of cheeseburgers with vegan things. You got to eat the cheeseburger. I mean, look, I agree. I'm not here to say, oh, yeah, we spend enough money on prevention in our healthcare system. We don't. It's a joke. We should spend a lot more. We should spend more money on figuring out nutrition. Great. I'm all for trying to reform our food supply. You know what we're going to do? We're going to inject ourselves with Wegovy and Ozempic so that we can keep eating whatever the hell it is we wanted to eat and spend $1 trillion there.
The companies that make those drugs are going to be big winners because nobody's going to get pushback on anything that they're making, whether the bad thing they're making that poisons us and makes us unhealthy, or the good thing they make on the other end. So it's like pharmaceutical companies do a lot of good, so they're going to be happy with companies that do a lot of bad. And both companies give money. They're
happy to stand by and cure your lifestyle-caused diseases.
Right. Okay.
That's what the system does. That's what the drugs do. That's what they more or less have been doing. By the way, just to get a little preliminary shot on the bow, watching the steroid-infused, suntan parlor tanned, weathered figure of RFK Jr. tell us about prevention is just, I'm not buying it. And people say, well, still he's got these ideas about going after Big Ag and Big Food. Get somebody in there who's credible. I'm not saying don't do it, but this guy, he's a joke.
Alleged steroid use?
I'll go that far. Alleged.
I won't.
But I won't go that far on the...
Guys juicing!
I won't go that far on the days spent in the famous suntanning booths where, by the way, many hundreds of young women die every year from what? Skin cancer caused by going into those tanning parlors.
Does anybody ever die in the booth itself?
Probably. I don't know. I did read a story once about a person who got stuck and couldn't open it, but it was fiction.
Oh, thank God, because that would be a rough way to go. All right, what are top lines on RFK? It seems like fluoride and vaccines are top lines. I don't know how to unpack either one of them necessarily because of, we're going on, whatever comments he's made. And then, at some point the rubber meets the road here. And I mean,
well, look, there's been some concerted effort by people who know his views on vaccines. And we don't have to repeat them much here. He hates vaccines. He's always hated them. He fears them. He spreads false claims about autism, long debunked. He worried about vaccine safety, although it was said that he got his own family vaccinated, at least initially, against COVID. But put that aside, I get it. He doesn't like vaccines. He's not going to support research on vaccines. He's not going to do anything to prep us for the next pandemic. And we got that. But there's a bunch of other stuff that he's equally loony on. So you remember the days of ivermectin and hydrochloroquine?
Do I? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I were taking them left and right in those raves that we would go to, the ivermectin parties. Look, this guy is a proponent of no FDA and have at it with the quack cures. He's a wellness nutball. That is to say, he doesn't want anybody regulating the safety of any drugs.
And just to be clear, the FDA is the agency that does what regarding drugs and supplements and so on. I mean, one of the big issues we've learned from you and others is how unregulated these supplements are. And one of the things that, specifically personally I get so upset about is because they are a huge moneymaker for people in my business, radio, traditional radio, much less podcasts. A lot of progressives sell supplements knowing that they don't do anything or even worse, do bad, or they don't do anything, but you're spending your hard-earned money on them. And so the FDA around supplements and drugs, what has been their responsibility?
Well, let me add, as someone who listens to a lot of radio, I know what I should be doing. I should be buying a bunker, stocking it with at least a couple years worth of these foods that allegedly last forever, get my supplements in place and get them going. There are many things that will prevent me from getting sick or ill, and I should have a lot of gold. So if I get all that together, right, I'll be good for the future. Nothing's going to get me. That's radio ads.
I do see a giant food bucket in your background of your shot right there. It says some Alex Jones on it.
Yeah. So look, with the supplements, they're not regulated. They're an industry that, believe it or not, is probably a quarter the size of the entire pharmaceutical sales industry. No rules, no nothing. Doses all over the place. Ingredients, who knows? Demonstration by testing them doesn't exist. FDA got kicked out of the business of supplement regulation by our old friend Orrin Hatch from Utah, who had a huge supplement industry in Utah and basically said, nope, not touching this.
Oh, wow.
No. But drugs, at least, well, I admit we have too many, and we should probably try to do things to have to take less of them. At least the FDA tests them, first in animals and then in people, to see whether they do anything and to see whether they have adverse events. Is it 100%? No, but it's pretty good. It probably weeds out thalidomide, which was the old drug that caused birth defects. Don't hear about that much anymore. So you want to put your faith in the FDA to at least regulate things or show that there's some reason to think they work. That's not RFK Jr. He's let it roll. Whatever it is, you want it, you take it, knock yourself out.
Health and Human Services oversees FDA.
Yes.
And so he'd be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And so, I mean, I don't understand this. I can't wrap my head around, and I'm trying to talk to more people in the federal government, what it would mean to get rid of an agency. I guess my initial response is, I guess they think, or they say often, let those responsibilities fall to the state. So let the state FDA do it. I guess just real quick, take that on. I mean, I don't think they can afford to do it. They don't have, we'd be paying a lot more taxes to the state FDA to fund them to the point that they would be able to test our individual drug. I just can't imagine. Is that the main issue there?
First of all, you'd have 50 state regulations. So drug guys would go to the place, the easiest one to get through, wherever that was. I can't imagine it's not beyond thinking that the legislature of Arkansas might say, gee, for the right donation, you can get through Arkansas FDA pretty fast, so go for it. It does seem to me, too, you need the best experts, the best scientists, the most trustworthy people to do the testing. And the way you do that is to get them to work for the feds, not get them to work for the, state of Alabama. I mean, not that you can't work for the state of Alabama and be trustworthy, but you try to hire the best. The other answer to your question about what happens when the agencies go, they don't have to go totally. You know what happens is people start dusting off their CVs and running out the door, and that's already started.
Has it?
All you have to do is, two of my students at the FDA are already peddling their CVs around looking for jobs. You freak out those scientists, and they're just going to say, I don't trust it.
You want to do fluoride?
The fluoride, another one of not only RFKs, but an issue that's been around ever since fluoride got proposed to be put in the water. Fluoride is in the water. You don't have to put it in. It's naturally there. In fact, how do we know fluoride's there? Because in some towns 50 years ago, people's teeth were getting stained and they couldn't figure out why. And then they realized they had too much fluoride and they had to take it out of the water. There's always been fluoride in your water.
Fluoride is naturally present in almost all water sources, including rivers, lakes, and oceans. Yes. What about ponds? I don't see ponds.
And I'm not sure about my pool, which I own. So it's out there. You want to get it in the right amount. The evidence that it prevents dental cavities in kids is gigantic. Give you one example. City of Calgary, about 5 years ago, pulled the fluoride out of its water supply after a big fight. After 4 years later, with all the kids coming in with cavities and other oral health problems, they put it back. So it's an experiment we've already lived through. But here's the real deal. If you're a rich guy like Pete, you go to the dentist, right? You go to the dentist?
Oh, I've been.
Yes, occasionally, let's say. And if you remember,
I'm supposed to go, but you remind me, I'm supposed to go back for what he called a deep cleaning because my gums are so fucked up.
There you go. That's right. That's right. That, by the way, folks, is poor toothbrushing, but we'll get
you son of a bitch. That's the same thing he said, and that's not true. I'll tell you, it's not true. I brush weekly.
Have you ever been asked at the dentist to get fluoride put on your teeth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it turns out the best way to keep yourself from getting cavities and some of that gingivitis that you're going in for a deep cleaning for, which you will regret to the end of your days.
Thank you. That's so comforting. You're such a good friend and doctor.
Is to put it on your teeth. The next best thing is to put it in the water, but it works best. So you could say, take it out of the water, and then this is what RFK Jr. will say. Pull it from the water supplies. Let you get it when you go to the dentist. You want it? Tell them to put it on. First of all, it's probably $80 to have it put on, so very few people are going to do that. And you know how many people actually in America get to go to the dentist?
Right.
I don't know, 30% of us. You know who won't get fluoride? Kids. Anybody who's poor.
Yeah. Well, and if you just brush your teeth regularly?
There are fluoride toothpaste with that in it. It helps. There are gargles. That helps. But overall, poor people, they're definitely the people who are going to suffer the most if you take fluoride out of the water.
How does he do it? How would they do it? Do these things not take congressional approval?
It depends. So
I guess with the new rules the Supreme Court made, especially the Chevron decision has a huge effect on administrative agencies being able to have a wide purview to make such decisions, I guess. Maybe I answered my own question.
Yep, and that's part of it. And then what you do is this, and you answered your own question a little bit earlier incorrectly. You say, well, we can't make you do anything, but here's our recommendations. And then states begin to drop fluoride, and all the people who hate fluoride show up at the community town meeting and complain about I don't know, whatever it is they think fluoride did to them. He's also a guy who loves to treat mental illness by sending people off to wellness camps. You know about this? He thinks that the way you handle addiction and some mental health problems is you round up people and put them into camps and force them to, I guess, get better. So this is his wellness camp idea.
Well, I mean,
a little bit like a concentration camp, but okay.
Rehabs and retreats and wellness camps do work for some people, but I don't think you can afford to send everybody to one.
Well, here's a reason why you might not be able to not only not afford it, there's no one to staff it. We don't have enough mental health people. Anybody tried to get an appointment for their kid to see a psychiatrist, psychologist, social worker, anybody? No, they're going to say to you, well, the next one's in a year. If you wanted to take mental health seriously, you'd create some programs to have people who could treat folks. I'm all for that. I'm not for leaving, I've said it here and I'll say it again, leaving the mentally ill homeless on the street or in prison is cruel. We ought to have better solutions. I don't know if it's a wellness camp, but I'd like to see them at least go into group homes or some kind of outpatient therapies, maybe even inpatient for like the mandatory 30-day thing. But there's no way to treat them because there's nobody to do it.
Okay, I didn't hear about the wellness camp idea, so that's a new one to me. I want to look more into. I don't like the word camp very much.
Yeah, it has a nice ring like internment camp.
Well, the government sending you to camp is, and that's especially all right. So
what the other thing to say is to be the head of HHS, to get leadership going that doctors and scientists, nurses are going to respect, they usually look to somebody that seems to be trustworthy and has, the kind of virtues and character that these kind of professionals look up to. Not the person who buries the animal in Central Park. It's not the person who runs around philandering for his whole life. He's just not a guy with like an ounce of moral character. I saw a photo, I hope it was photoshopped, of him flying around with Trump and Trump Jr. on a plane. They were all eating fast food.
Yeah, Elon Musk, RFK Jr. Trump, they all at McDonald's.
The guy, he doesn't have the kind of character, let's just put it that way. Is it possible to find somebody who could get some reforms going? Yeah. Does Trump care? No, because he's clearly sticking it to his enemies with this kind of an appointment.
I could give 100 examples as to why character matters to be a parent, a partner, a teacher, or a human in any role of responsibility. And certainly a lot more examples when it comes to being in public service, working in the government. But I do want your, example or a good reason as to why. And this is the dumbest question. I can't believe I have to ask you it, but you are an ethicist. Why does moral character matter if you're going to run part of the federal government, whether it be the Secretary of Defense, Health and Human Services, or President? Because there's a lot of reasons why it matters. And I would say I'll just say one quickly. It's primarily if you're a MAGA person, you like Trump. The reason why character matters is so that simply he does what he says he's going to do. And certainly he does do some of the things that he said he's going to do, but he certainly doesn't even try to do others or even have, that would be one reason. Why does moral character matter for, in this case, the Health and Human Services Secretary?
The most important role anybody related to health has to play is to be a convincing source of trustworthy information. You don't have moral character, you don't get trusted. That simple. So if somebody says to me, oh, you love vaccines, Art, because you're just on the payroll for big pharma and big vaccines or whatever, they're trying to knock aside my trustworthiness. Right. I'm not saying that was wrong. I'm just saying you can't trust that guy. he's on the payroll of such and so. So your Surgeon General, health communicators from the CDC, what do they got? They don't actually have anything to enforce. All they do is have trust. I'm telling you, this pandemic is bad. Get a shot. I'm telling you, whatever they want to tell you, it doesn't matter. Whatever the message.
Do vaccines. I mean, what are your concerns right now with what you've heard and what could happen? I was hiking, as I do every Wednesday, with my best friend, Dr. Zatz. He's a pediatrician. And he said, they're just going to bring back measles. Measles is going to be everywhere. And then what? And then people are going to vote against him. I said, measles are bad, but does anybody die? He goes, yes, kids will die. People, And so what is your concern? Do you share that concern about measles or anything? What do you think? What do you think they couldn't be so stupid as to outlaw mandates for, say, vaccines or other extremely communicative diseases? Is that the word, communicative?
So here's where my somewhat progressive friends get a little
polio.
Little mixed up. The mandates went out the window 10 years ago. We have religious exemptions, personal exemptions. There are plenty of people who don't vaccinate their kids now. Measles is burbling along in the background, starting to increase. So is whooping cough. We had a case of polio actually here in the U.S. that came from the Middle East.
Yeah, where I live in Rockland County, we're the Orthodox community, and they don't vaccine for.
So there are plenty of people not vaccinating. What RFK Jr. could do is your hiking companion's worried about something that's already happening, is what I'm saying. What he needs to be alert to is this: no more research on the next generation of vaccines. So we're about to get vaccines for chlamydia, gonorrhea, cancer, skin cancer. Jimmy Carter's taking a vaccine now that has kept that guy alive, years. I'm going to shut all that down. No more vaccine research at my NIH, says RFK Jr. And we have a program in place that says if you get hurt through a vaccination, since we want the public to do it and we want manufacturers to make these vaccines, even though they're not their biggest money makers, we're going to let you get a kind of mediated resolution and you'll get money. You take that program away and every company that makes vaccines will just leave the space.
Oh boy. That's bad. That seems bad.
So I know the path they're going. It's got nothing to do with mandates. The only place that still has mandates a little bit is Connecticut, New York, and California. And even there you can get out if you don't want to do it.
So just to be clear, you're concerned about future vaccine approval?
Yeah. Future vaccine approval and keeping the companies making them. There is a government program that if you squelch it or don't fund it, they're all going to pull out.
And they're going to pull out because vaccines aren't that profitable.
Correct. And they get sued. They would be sued all the time by anti-vaccine crazies.
Wow. I don't like your scenario one bit. I don't like you even anymore.
Hey, I'm here to spread happy news. All
right. Well, I've already gone.
One other little RFK thing, which I love.
Yeah.
He is against, I don't even understand this. It's so cockamamie. He thinks oils that come from seeds, canola oil, saffron oil, that sort of stuff are extremely dangerous. And I don't know why he thinks this. There's no evidence that that's so, but he wants to ban them. So when he sits down and talks about food reform, part of his food reform is to get rid of those oils. Now, what I do know is this. Your grandpa and my grandpa, when they cooked with lard and butter, all were dead of heart disease by 42. The replacement of those fats with seed oil fats, most of them, palm oil isn't good, but there's a bunch of others that are great, has been another one of these public health triumphs. And I don't know where he got it in his head that he's like bananas, about seeds. But he is.
Well, you're not going to like this. News breaking while we're talking. Apparently, RFK said he would appoint to head FDA a block of just an actual lard. Just a block of lard to run the agency. It's not even a person, Art.
And speaking of which, if you wanted to do something for food that was doable, instead of doing what Trump intends, which is to cut all the deep state out, how about we have some more food inspectors, a little bit more strength at that department? Today we had an announcement, organic carrots filled with E. coli.
Ooh.
This was in our area.
Those are the best kind.
Yeah. And I think we all know that we've watched McDonald's get blasted with his bad onions, and they've been pulling pancakes. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Food safety is collapsing. Any ideas, RFK Jr.?
Well, it looks to be those baby carrots, which you shouldn't be buying anyway. A bag,
babies.
These people that buy carrots already peeled, or baby carrots that are just regular carrots shaved down, it's terrible for the environment. So I hope those people get E. coli is what I'm trying to say. I've given up. All right, I got to let you go, I guess. Anything else? There's so many things we didn't get to.
I don't know.
Right. I'll pick up with you.
One long, interesting term here with, as I say, a Congress deeply obligated to the healthcare industry, ag industry, as they are, watching some football on the side if he really does get the appointment, yelling about seed oil all day. I don't think he's the person to liberate us from what is an absolutely bad environmental, health, agricultural direction. Wouldn't argue about it, but I don't know, putting him at the helm of that boat, that seems to me to be iceberg land.
Well, and we're out of time, but we didn't even get to having you explain your endorsement of Matt Gaetz. You're supporting Matt Gaetz for Department of Justice. I was surprised at you. I was surprised.
That's because I'm a believer in HPV vaccine, so I know we can minimize the harm that he causes.
The undisputed champion of comedy, Dr. Arthur Caplan. Thank you so much, as always. So good.
Thanks.
Yeah, there he goes, Dr. Arthur Caplan. Both great guests today. A lot of laughs, a lot of sincerity, a lot of concern. But I love that conversation with Caplan, and I hope that you'll go let him know that you heard him here. Both of them. Go on social media. The links to where they're at now are in the show notes. Check out the show notes. I write them every day, pretty much. I mean, the subscriber email has become more and more extensive over the years. You get your vitamin N every morning. Send me your vitamin N. No man-made objects. That's the only rule. Send me a picture. If you live all around buildings, send me a picture of the sky, the clouds. I don't care. But just prove that you got out. Share it with everybody. Get outside. Get your nature. I'm doing that right now. Taking Indy the dog. That's my dog's name. My Havanese pup. All 13 years of her out into the woods with my bestie, Dr. Ken Zatz, and his dog. And I am very excited. Looking forward to that and so much more today. I hope to hear from you. I'll check in on you on the Discord platform, I'm sure, throughout the day. If you're feeling alone, hop in there. Hope to see you tomorrow night at the Hangout. Go subscribe to youtube.com/standupwithpete. I'm going live there and other platforms on Friday at noon. And that's all I've got for you. I'm at the end, you bumblebees. You made it all the way to an hour and 40-some minutes, almost 2 hours that you spent with me. You are a special kind of soul. I hope you took as much out of it as I did making it. Love you. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye. John Carroll taking us out.
When you start making sense and you stand